Hey, it's Chris and Brian here, and today the topic is speccing out a new desktop. Okay, so a lot of times we get questions from clients. Chris gets the most questions and he does the most speccing. So let's talk about what you look for in desktop specifications, Chris, when you're getting a new desktop for a client.
So, I mean, this would apply for both laptops and desktops, but you'd want something, depending on I'm assuming they're in a Windows environment, you'd want the processor to be Windows 11 compatible. So that would include things like, supporting secure boot, TPM 2.0, and things of that nature. So I believe the specifications are like Intel 8th gen or newer and AMD 2nd gen Ryzen or newer. And, you know, what else would you'd want at least 16 gigs of RAM?
Okay, so there's a little flexibility, it sounds like
Yeah.
there, but those are some good benchmarks. Now, you mentioned TPM. What do you use the TPM chip for?
So that would be what the trusted platform module.
Yes.
So that with secure boot would help with what is it? Like, making sure the device hasn't been tampered with for the most part. That's my understanding of it. It secures it with like cryptographic keys. I don't, get into too much detail of how all that plays together. But generally speaking, secure boot, secure boot and TPM work alongside each other.
And also Windows BitLocker too, right? Like
Yep.
you
Yes.
can't
That's a
use BitLocker as easily without that TPM chip. You can still use it,
right.
but it's a convoluted process, and we don't like
So
to get into that.
so this it depends what you're using for TPM too, though. There's different standards. You could have a integrated TPM chip on the motherboard on a laptop or desktop, or you can use the software-based TPM that Intel provides, like what is it, Intel PTT, and then I think AMD has an equivalent called FTP or something like that. Let me see here.
Yeah.
FTPM is the AMD one.
What is it? Sorry.
FTPM.
FTPM. Okay. So let's talk about we typically like Dell.
Yep.
There's just they're reliable and they work well over time.
Minus an XPS.
Minus the XPS. Yeah, we've had some XPS issues. Again, that's more of like the gaming home line. We try to stick to the business line of Dell. How about as far as micro versus small form factor versus regular desktop tower?
So I mean, it really shouldn't matter, except if it's a CAD machine, something doing 3D rendering. The small form factor might not be as how would I put this? You know, the thermals may be iffy, overheating, things like that. You'd want a big precision tower for something doing that kind of work. Trying to see what else here. But other than that, a micro should work fine for just about anybody. Plant it behind a monitor, tuck it behind your desk somewhere, and the small form factors generally are the ones we go with. Or more often than not, we're going with those for like a standard desktop. But I mean, I think it comes down to the user's preference at that point, what their preferences are for a device.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else we're missing, or that pretty much covers it on the new desktop and what you're looking for? Did you mention the storage, the
No,
amount of storage and
so
type?
this varies from client to client. Some people go a little cheaper and go with 250 gigs. They go, oh, well, hey, we use OneDrive, SharePoint. What do we need to save stuff on the desktop for? Generally, I recommend at least like a 500 gig minimum, 512 gig minimum. And if you want to play it safe, really a terabyte, probably, you know, 16 gigs, 1 terabyte, and a Intel or a Windows 11 compatible processor.
And no spinning drives.
No NVMe SSD
NVM
drive.
NVMe, SSD, if for whatever reason,
A
but
SATA
most
fine
stuff is,
too. Yeah.
yeah, most stuff is NVMe though.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
I mean, and I don't know, realistically, we do spec them out with 16 gigs, but I'd argue that we're getting real close to 32 being the baseline here between how much memory browsers use, you know what I mean? Browsers and Windows itself, that those memory numbers are creeping up year by year.
And from what we see, it's probably mostly, and just from us using them all the time, like Chrome and Edge browsers with, 100 tabs open.
Yeah. I use 64 gigs for that reason. I
Yeah.
have plenty of headroom here.
Yeah, so that does consume a lot of memory. All right, we'll wrap this one up. Thanks a lot for your help, Chris.
Yep, no problem.